welcome everyone to the second webinar introducing North Shropshire College as the new LIC monitor farm. If you haven't seen any of the things that we've been doing for the monitor farm to date, I encourage you to go to the LIC in UK Facebook page and look at the monthly updates. You'll also be able to find there a link to our YouTube account, which we'll be able to see our prior webinars, also any future webinars that we put up. These links can also be found on our website, and if you have any questions regarding to the webinars that have been done, you can either send an email or post the questions on the Facebook page. I will now quickly go around everyone and introduce ourselves that are on the panel tonight. I'm Sean Chubb. I'm the pasture profit consultant in the Midlands and Wales, and I'll be facilitating this evening. I'm the one who's been working with Tom Moore to bring the monitor farm. I'll now pass over to Tom.
Hi there, I'm Tom, farm manager at North Shropshire College. So I'll just pass over to Tim now from LIC.
We might be having some difficulties with Tim. I think he's got a bit of a dodgy connection. So whilst we're waiting for Tim, we'll pass over to Sarah.
Yes, I'm here to look after the questions tonight. Hopefully you'll all be sending some questions in. I think Sean's going to tell you in a minute how to do that.
Yep. We've also got Mark Ryder, who's the General Manager for LIC in Europe here, also in the background, just in case Tim drops out like he has done. Tim is the he looks after the consultants and Ireland, just to give you a bit of a background on what his job is. So has a background in banking, much like myself does in New Zealand, so that is why he's been brought on this call as well. So to outline what is going to be happening tonight, so the agenda for tonight is to go over the KPIs for profitability as we see it. Then we'll look at where the farm was before they started moving into the autumn block calving process. Then we'll look at what areas are currently be focused on within the financial year to improve the financial performance. And then we'll go on to where actually Tom wants to see the farm get to and how that's moving forward. And then we'll finish off the evening with looking at how to budget through transition. The ability to ask questions throughout, and at the end of each topic, we will answer these questions. So if you want to know how to ask a question, look down at the bottom of your screen. There'll be a Q&A box. If you click on that, another small pop-up box will come up, and you'll be able to put the questions in there. So please do put forward any questions that you've got, and then we'll answer them at the end of each topic. So moving to the first topic. So the KPIs. I won't go through all of those because some of these will get covered off in later webinars as we look at grazing and also breeding, but I will touch on them slightly. Now, these KPIs are mainly directed towards autumn block farmers, but there are parts of this that will be applicable to spring block farmers or year-round farmers that will help you drive profitability. So the one that is really applicable for tonight is the CFP KPI, and that's having at least 30% of your income retained at the end. So that's after all your variable costs and overhead costs have been covered. So to be able to achieve this, we really need to have variable costs to be less than 35% and the overhead costs to be 35%. Now, of course, we can rejig that around a little bit. If for some reason we've got slightly higher overheads, we can bring back our variable costs a little bit to ensure that we attain at least the 30% retained income. Then also having greater than 100 kgs of milk solid per hectare, and that's just to ensure that our assets that we have are being used productively and we're getting the most out of them. So how do we attain those financial results? That all comes back down to what we're doing on farm. So we need to be achieving an average number of lactations for our cows of greater than 4, and that will help reduce our replacement rate. So to do that, we need to be retaining more heifers. So at least 95% of heifers need to be retained into second lactation. And then obviously body condition score is important to ensure cows getting calf. an average calving interval of less than 370 days. So the reason why that's important is if it's longer than that, eventually at the end, they're not going to get to 4 lactations. They're going to get to the end of your block, and then they're going to not get being calf, and so they're going to end up moving out of your system. So what we need there is to be achieving a good conception rate and a good 3-week submission rate. Forage is a percentage of the diet, greater than 80%. So this is targeting the average days at grass, getting a good utilization of graze grass and maintaining that residual of about 1,500 kgs of dry matter. And then obviously the days at grass is important. So, for an autumn block farm, it realistically needs to be at least 9 months. And to achieve that, we need to be hitting our average farm covers at the different times of year. Average days in milk. Now we want this to be greater than for an average for the herd of 265 days. So to achieve that, we need to be getting as many cows in calf and calving within the first 6 weeks. And so, we want heifers and cows calving early. And lastly is milk from forage, because forage is the cheapest form of feed we have on farm. So if we can get as much milk from forage, therefore we can reduce the amount of concentrates we have. So to achieve that, we need to have good ME in the grass. So that's going to be helped by maintaining our average farm covers and having the best silage as possible. So that's by getting as close to 12 ME as possible. So before we move on, I'll just ask Sarah if there's any questions come through as of yet.
Not yet. No, we'll wait to the next section, I think.
All right, not a problem. So moving on to the actual financial section. So we'll be looking at the 2017-18 financial year for North Shropshire College. So Tom, I'll just ask you now before we get a flood of questions saying, well, why are we using the 2018 financial year instead of the 2019 financial year? So do you just want to talk us through that quickly?
Basically, it was a merger with the colleges. Hereford and Ludlow took over the college in end of 2018 to 19. So there's no record on data, and it's hard to actually track that financial year. So that's why we have no data for that.
Yeah. So that's the across the whole farm would have taken on a new management system, and things would have started changing with that merger, I'm guessing.
Yeah, whole new start from scratch type scenario.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And just so everyone knows, you weren't actually on farm during this time period, were you?
No, I arrived late 2018. So I mean, December 2018, I arrived at Walford. Yeah.
So if everyone can keep that in mind with your questions, that we might not be able to answer them to to pinpoint accuracy, because none of us were actually involved with the farm at that point in time. And has anyone actually left from the farm from this point in time that we're looking at, Tom?
From this point in time, no. No.
Yep. I know. All right. All good. So if we start off by looking at the milk, can you just talk us through who you supply and what sort of contract was on when you were in this financial year?
Yeah, so we're on a Muller direct contract. Basically, it's a white water contract with a slight bonus for butter fat. So I think it's 0.25 of a penny to every 0.1% of butter fat produced.
So realistically, that milk contract would have driven the decisions on farm to be more litres based than solids, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have been, yes.
Yeah. I know. And in terms of the stock sales, what would have been the largest component making up the stock sales? Is it cull cows, calf sales?
Yeah, I think there's a high proportion of beef calf sales and a few beef sales, cull cows. There's a chance that the sheep flock might be part of those stock sales as well. So that'll be in the whole farm financial data, not just the dairy, but yeah.
All right, all good. So there's obviously some inventory change there, but we won't go into that. Otherwise, we'll end up doing death by numbers to everyone. So we'll just try and stick to the relevant costings that have sort of been standing out to me. So if we move on to the purchased feed and forage section, we'll see that there's actually quite a large purchased feed there. Now that's possibly going to be spread out across the 4 categories, but with the costings that we had on hand from that time period, they're all lumped together, so that's why they're all together. But if you want to talk us through the feeding regime for the cows, so to sort of explain this figure a bit more, Tom?
So yeah, they were a full TMR, fully housed TMR herd, fed concentrate. There was alcohol feeders installed, maize silage. There was a bit of whole crop. A lot of purchase feed during that period, and it was a dry year as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's had a big impact on that, I would think, as well.
Yeah, I think if everyone thinks back to how their financial costs were impacted by the drought and the beast from the east, they'll be able to at least have a rough idea of how that possibly would have impacted on the college as well. So in terms of the amount of concentrates fed per cow, do you have any rough idea of what that would have been?
It's about 2.6 tonne a cow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they did about 5,500 litres from concentrate during that period.
Right. Yeah.
And 2,500 litres from forage.
Yeah. And so how were the young stock managed at this time period as well? Because I'm guessing some of this cost is associated with them as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, post-weaning calves, the majority were reared indoors. I'm guessing ad lib corn and straw, or maybe maize, bit of silage maybe, depending on what was on hand.
And so you talked in the first webinar that some cows did go out grazing in the summertime. Like how much, how many of them would have been put out to grass?
Roughly 60, 70 cows, I would think. Yeah, 25 litre below cows would have gone out. Yeah. But they're still being, they still would have had a buffer feed. They still would have received concentrate as well.
Yeah. So I'm guessing there's a portion of the herd that might not have ever gotten out onto pasture then, if that was the criteria.
Yeah, definitely. If you calved in the summer, you didn't go out.
Yeah. No. And then I guess if we move on to the forage costs, so the fertilizer does seem high on a per hectare basis, but that's because this is taken on looking at the milking platform, which we have down at 63 hectares, but there's a lot more outlying area to the farm as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So once we add into that area, the per hectare cost would have come back down into a more aligned to other farms.
Yeah. No, so the whole farm was about 450 acres back then.
Yeah. And the seeds and spray, so that sort of leads to a fair bit of cropping being done. You talked about whole crop. What else would have been?
Maize. I think there's been a bit of grass reseeding as well on top of that.
Very good. Moving on to the next section, which is livestock costs. There's 2 there that really stand out. The first one being vet and med. What were the main issues with the herd, or main issues that coming forward that were resulting in the vet and med costs?
Fertility. I think calf health, pneumonia was a big strain on the herd. Mastitis and lameness.
Yeah. And so with the mastitis and lameness, if you were to remain as an all year round calving herd and keeping them indoors, would have there been anything that you could have done to say the shedding or the parlour or anything like that to fix those issues?
Yeah, I mean, we could improve the housing, potentially turn one of the straw yards into a cubicle shed. There's various little things we could have done, but I don't think we'd have really got too much on top of it, if I was honest.
Yeah. Because what sort of lameness and mastitis issues were they?
All our mastitis was strep urea, so it's all environmental. There was very little E. coli or cow-to-cow transmission or all on the beds. Lameness wise, a lot of digital dermatitis, so pools of slurry or typical bleeding doors. A bit of sole ulcers, so poor bedding or poor cubicle designs, cows not laying in and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, obviously, if you were to maintain an all year round herd or indoors all the time, those would be the areas that you would have been focusing on to get right. But obviously, moving to grass, we're going to hopefully tackle that by having the cows outside. So moving on to the other cost that is rather large in this category, and that's the bedding cost. So you talk about a straw yard and sort of fixed cubicle shedding in that. So what was the bedding that's been used in these sheds?
It was all wheat straw in the 5 straw yards that are total on the farm, and then there's 160 cubicles that have been bedded on sawdust as well.
Yeah. But to take into account the 5 straw yards and the cubicles, there's still a very high cost for that bedding. Do you think that there might have been it is used a bit too liberally, higher rates than needed?
Potentially, but I mean, it would been a dry year as well. I think the seasonal cost of straw would have been through the roof on top of that. So I mean,
Yeah.
You have a sucker punch with your purchase feed costs as well.
Yeah. And you're right there. So if we move through to the last bit and that we're going to look on in terms of actually narrowing down onto the costs, that's power machinery and labour. So I've circled 3 here, being repairs and spares, other contracting, which is possibly taken into account contracting for silage and forage, labour. Does the fact that it's been a college farm, does that impact on these costs at all?
Potentially, but it shouldn't. Yeah, there's always that. Having students on the farm sometimes requires an extra set of hands, or we don't look at students as labour units. You can't do. So we have to make sure we've got enough staff to be able to support the students and support their learning as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so the repairs and spares, you don't think that the fact that you need to train students to use machinery, there's potential risk of accidents, that's not leading to any issues there?
Potentially. I mean, that's what that could have been, but I think there's a bit more machinery on the farm, so there's a higher risk of machinery breaking down as well.
And then just looking at that labour figure, how many labour units would have been making up that labour cost?
When I arrived in December, I was one of 8 members of staff tasked with trying to get the farm sorted.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, if there's one of 8, then you're fair reason to have that cost that high.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so obviously the contracting, that's for silage and spreading of effluents. Anything else you guys got contractors in, or?
Yeah, that could be, and then some of the labour units kind of come under the contractor as well.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, that's good. So yeah, again, we didn't cover off all the items on here, and a couple that we've actually left out being depreciation and sundry costs. There's a reason why we've left those out, being that there's certain things that the college has in terms of buildings that needed for students that you wouldn't normally have on farm. So that's going to push them a little bit higher. So for that reason, we haven't brought that into the discussion. But you can actually see there that there's a fair bit of work needs to be done to get the variable costs and the overhead costs down to about 35% and to get that retained earnings up. So before we start moving on to the areas that you're going to be targeting there, Tom, was there anything in here that you looked at when you took over as manager to say, well, these are the areas that you wanted to target?
Yeah, definitely the purchase feed cost. yeah, I suppose output a little bit. You know, labour definitely one that wants tackling as well.
Yeah.
You know, and our overheads, they need a good look through.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we go into actually what you're doing in this financial year, I see we've got a few questions coming through. So
Yeah, we have. One of the first questions was, how reasonable is it to expect a spring calving herd to get 6,000 litres from forage?
it's probably a little bit more difficult for a spring calving herd to achieve that, given the fact that more of the cows are going to be out on grass more time, and so the dry matter percentage is going to be less. But you still can get very close. If you take Lincoln University Dairy Farm, for example, they're achieving 500 milk solids per cow off of grass alone, or grass and a bit of silage. So if you translate that into litres on a 9% constituents, you over 5,000 litres. So yeah, I'd be targeting that to be as high as possible.
Okay, then we've got one here that says, you mentioned some of the other enterprise costs, such as sheep, were combined in the figures. What percentage of the overall do you think they account for?
The sheep, probably, looking back, they're probably around 30%. No, overall figures, no, about 10-15%. This is mainly the dairy, I would say, that's caused the high cost.
Okay, and then another one here, the lime costs you've shown show 0. What are the current soil indices? Does anything need to be applied in order to assist with the planned growth and palatability to the cow to attain residuals of 1,500 kilograms dry matter?
I don't know why there's 0. Again, wasn't there at the time. Yeah, we've recently done some soil testing. I suppose we'll cover that on the grazer one, but there are some issues with the lime and with palatability, I suppose. But the grazing platform's not actually too bad looking through it. But some of the offline lands where we potentially grow our maize going forward, I think there's a few issues to sort there.
Then we've got one on labour. Obviously, when you had 8 people employed, what sort of hours of work were they doing each week?
Some were very flexible. Some of them were like, there wasn't all full time. Some of them were quite support staff. Some were doing like 20 hours a week. I was doing 14, and some was doing, the full bore, the 80, 90 hours. And there was people going and coming, and there was an interim farm manager at the time. There's the farm manager who was coming in was overseeing it as well. He was around, so.
Okay, and one final question here before we move on. What was holding back production with the level of feed that was going in? Because obviously you've given quite high figures for concentrate use.
Poor quality forage, and poor decision making. That'd be my 2 looking back and from what we've experienced on our arrival.
Okay, let's leave it at that, Sean, for the moment, and move on.
Thanks, Sarah. So if we move on to the areas that you're fully targeting this season, so if we move back up to the top in terms of milk production, you said that you're supplying Muller, and I know that you managed to change the contract there this season. So can you talk us through what you moved to and how you managed to do that?
So we've gone to a future base contract. It's virtually the same contract. It's a bit more high emphasis on welfare, which we've managed to get in on. So basically, it gives us an extra 1 pence per litre overall milk sales for the year. So it's like a 13th milk check, so it's quite nice.
Very good. And are you getting more bonus for the fat and protein?
No, it's exactly the same, but we know that going forward, what we're planning to do, we're going to be able to maximise the butt fats a bit more, and that will raise the profile of our milk contract.
Yeah, and so obviously we've turned the cows out grazing already, and that's going to have a huge impact across the whole board of costs. But which cost do you actually see the turning of cows out early this year is going to have the biggest impact on?
Labour's is had a massive impact on labour. We're currently down at 3 full-time in relief. Feed costs have been dramatically hit. And milk from forage is probably be up. We're looking, we could be around the 5,000 litre mark this time. Our vet costs are down as well. We're already down 1.2 pence compared to last financial record year. So we're certainly moving in the right direction.
Yeah, because I thought power machinery could be one that would be quite heavily impacted with the fact that you've got less tractor use with less feeding out. You've got less contractors needs to spread slurry, and then just the power usage with actually moving into a herd and having that cleanliness of the cows coming through as well. But there's a fair bit of that can be tackled there. You said that vet med has been pulled back. So how have you managed to achieve that?
A lot of moving into the block, so we don't see the vet every week, every fortnight now. So that's had a massive impact. And also, we've started to use some different management tools on the farm. They're having a massive change to what we're doing. I think we was doing some maths yesterday, and we're saving around £20 a cow in the last 6 months compared to the first 6 months of when we installed it. So it's nearly paying for itself as well.
Yeah. And so this management tool is?
It's Cow Manager. Yeah.
And so just so people who aren't aware of it, just give it a bit of a rundown of exactly what it gives you.
Cow Manager basically it gives us every behavioural trait of the cow. It gives us our activity, gives us temperature, ambient temperature, shall I say. It gives us a feeding behaviour, it gives us a rumination behaviour, and it gives us resting times as well. So we're able to spot bulling cows, we're able to spot sick cows. It's more alert, and it's on the go. It's 24/7. It doesn't stop.
Yeah, so obviously it's helping you at two ends. It's helping you cut costs, but also it's helping you achieve, the 375-day calving interval for the mere fact that you've got something telling you or helping you to pick up, silent heats and things like that.
Yeah, I mean we're already down a straw of semen per conception with the autumn calving. That's obviously we'll come off more, but it's had a massive impact.
Yeah. All right, brilliant. And I just think if we just touch on the feed side of things, so in terms of if we were to take the farm back a year to where we are now, so at the moment we've obviously got cows out, heifers out, and if the calves are old enough, they're out. So if we take it back 12 months, everything would be in, or majority would be in. So how much sort of feed savings are you making a day with all these animals out?
Massive. I mean, we're feeding 5.5 kilos to the milking herd, and so 123 cows get 5.5 kilos concentrate. I think we're on a feed rate of 0.24 at the minute. And then we're just feeding our R1s about 2 kilos of corn, and there's only about 25 minutes. So we're making massive savings. I mean, it's hard without looking at feed prices and stuff, it's hard to quantify, but we've got to be saving a hell of a lot.
But the volumes is huge.
Yeah.
And then so in the last webinar, we obviously talked about all the development that's gone on, tracks, fencing, water line, everything that's gone in. So has that been part of your, does that have to come into the CFP side of things, or was there a capital development budget provided to you to get that underway?
There's a capital budget. It's not come out of the running cost totally of the farm, so it won't affect our CFP. But I think we've spent roughly £48,000 on doing the tracks, fencing, water troughs and the feeders in the parlour.
Yep.
Implementing them, but yeah.
All right, good. Yeah, so I'll let everyone know that we haven't actually set any budget targets for the college this financial year, and there was a couple of reasons for this. One was being that there was some measurement decisions from last financial year that were flowing through, like sort of there was well, under the new management over a year's worth of maize silage put in, and so obviously that harvesting cost came into this financial year, and there was some other stuff going on that was prohibiting us to get our grazing plan underway, and that was not getting the in-shed feeders in on time than what we wanted. So there's a few things like that that was going on that sort of stopped us. So yeah, we don't actually have any on-farm targets for this year, but nevertheless, when we do have our open day in October, we'll still be able to get the CFP results for this financial year to still compare with what it was back in 2018, so we can actually show some progress going forward. Is there any questions come through, Sarah?
Yes, we've got one about cow manager. Has the cost benefit analysis been done on cow manager, and how will it help drive profit?
In a fashion, yes. We've paid about £1,500 to have it installed. Each tag's about £27 a cow. We have a running cost of £17 a year for subscription on it. We worked out yesterday, like in the last 6 months, it saved us £20 a cow already. It's saving on antibiotic use. It's getting cows in calf quicker, and it's making it a hell of a lot simpler as well. It's getting back in calf. So yeah.
Okay, and then we've got another question here on staff. Now that you've said that you're down to 3 people and a relief, the question is, how have the staff hours reduced or worked out with that team?
Obviously, when we're housed, it's a bit full on, but roughly we're doing around 55 hours a week. We do have little peaks and troughs of busy periods, but at the minute, it's very much relaxed. All the cows are out. Roughly on average, we're probably down below the 50-hour mark now. Now we're caught up ourselves really well, and yeah, it's had a massive impact. A lot better.
Okay, that's the questions for that section, I think, Sean, if you want to go back.
Thank you. So moving on to where we want to get going forward. Early on in the monitor farm process, me and Tom sat down and threw around a few numbers to see where get the farm to in terms of a CFP result. 2 things came out of this conversation that I was really happy about. First of all, Tom said that he wanted to achieve be an average CFP result going off the LIC autumn calving averages, and then he wanted to then push on to become within the top sort of 25 to 10% of autumn calving herds. So that made me quite happy for one reason, or for one of the reasons why I was quite happy, because he wasn't just going to settle for average or a break-even cost structure. And the other one was that when we're throwing around some numbers, one of the things he asked was, well, what if we drop out this feed and we do less litres? Are we going to be more profitable? And after doing a few figures, it actually turned out that we could actually, if we get the cows eating enough grass, would be more profitable to drop out the concentrate and do less litres. So Tom was actually thinking about profitable milk over litres. So that made me quite happy, and knew that I'd be able to work quite well with Tom. Obviously the CFP figures on the right, that is the average CFP figures for all LIC collected data from the 17-18 year. So we've got a like for like in terms of years, and this is all autumn calving herds. And then obviously the North Shropshire College Walford Farm is the one on the left. So Tom, do you just want to talk us through why you chose those goals?
Because I think they're achievable. I mean, they're realistic goals, especially with the plans I have in place. And I as well, to make the farm an attractive prospect for students and learners to come and be able to witness a profitable and sustainable dairy enterprise.
That's good. And over what time frame are you wanting to achieve these goals?
I think realistically it's going to be 4 years. I think by the time we've got the right genetics in place and the system, nailed, I think it's, we're still a Holstein herd. We can't forget that. Our first crop of crossbred calves are coming through this autumn. There's 2 years before they enter the herd, and then they need to get to maturity as well. So,
yeah. And so, what's the plan to achieve this? Obviously, we've got to cut a lot of concentrates out. So, what is your per cow concentrate goal to achieve that top 25%?
I think we talked a ton to 1,200. 7,500 litres, 8,000 litres, but high emphasis on the milk from forage. We should be able to do it, but we just got to keep pushing ourselves, push the cows the whole way, and keep it simple, but keep stability as well at the same time.
Yeah. And so obviously the book's going to play a big part in getting the profitability there. So we've talked about getting the cows into this into a full autumn herd within 2 years, and getting them, staying them in there and keeping a nice tight block, which will also help get those litres and be able to all turn cows out to grass to achieve that lower concentrate figure as well. So I see we've got some more questions coming through, Sarah.
Yes, we've got a question about livestock costs. What are the livestock costs exactly, and how will you reduce them?
Again, I wasn't here at the time, so I couldn't really comment on that. I don't know if Sean's got anything he could say.
Also, if we go back up, the livestock costs as the vet med, the bedding, the breeding and AI recording, and livestock sundries. So I think the breeding and AI and recording and livestock sundries might also be incorporating some of the parlour consumables and parlour service and maintenance, as there was no figures in the costings that we had for that. So some of those costs have been merged into other areas. So that's what makes up the livestock costs.
Okay. Then I've got a question here. What CFP would need to be obtained if the college farm was to reach the top 25% of autumn farms?
So that's going to change from year to year. Obviously, depending on the milk price and input costs, all that sort of stuff. But if we take the 2017-18 financial year, the CFP or comparable farm profit would need to be around 20 pence per litre.
Okay. And going by the LIC figures, this would suggest around half of the autumn farms are not achieving 35% variable and overhead costs. So is the 35% a realistic target?
Yes. We got to keep in mind that this was a drought year, and every farm I pretty much saw in terms of CFP results did take a hit that year. So it's not always achievable every year, but if we're getting it, say, 9 out of every 10 years, then therefore we've got the ability to, pay off debt, expand, bring new family members in, and then also ride out these poor years where we are affected by low payout and the likes of droughts. We're not having to go to the bank to get funds. We've actually got reserves in the background that we can use for it. So yes, the average farm did not achieve that target, but that doesn't mean that it's not achieved in other years.
That's it for now, I think, Sean.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to the final bit, which is budgeting through transition. And so obviously, if we're looking at North Shropshire College and what they're doing, they're taking from one farm system moving to another, and there's a lot of moving parts there that need to be worked out to ensure that we can budget through and know what we're going to be doing. So what we need to first sit down and do is plan what can be achieved. So without all the infrastructure that went in place beforehand, would we be able to achieve what we set out to do this year? No. So Tom and the guys, that they put in a lot of hours over wintertime to put in the track, to put in the water, to get fencing done, to ensure that we could achieve the plan that we put forward. So it's about first of all knowing what can be achieved. If you can't get done what needs to be done to graze 9 months of the year, then don't try and graze, or don't budget for grazing 9 months of the year, because it's just going to throw everything out. Know the impact of what decisions were made last year, how that's going to impact on this financial year. So like I talked about the maize, that's a cost that was made in the last financial year, but it's sitting in this financial year. So that's got to be taken into account, especially if we're going to be doing less litres. That's still a cost that needs to be covered by litres in this year. And then so obviously, talking about production, it's knowing when cows reach their peak milk production. So what we're looking to do is move cows, or have cows milking longer than that their calving interval will be longer than 370 days to get them into the block. So we're moving them back, and that's going to cause them to have a longer milking length, and therefore that tail period is going to reduce the actual total milk that they give over a 2-year period. So if you were milking 100 cows and they were all year-round herd and they were all doing 6,500 litres, if you were to move them into a block, that's actually going to affect your production. You're probably not going to be able to achieve over that transition period the 6,500 litres from every cow because of that the moving of them. Now, if we look at net stock income, so with the moving of cows, that's going to impact on calf sales and cow sales. So we're moving cows later through the block, and that's going to flow through into the stock sales. There's also could be a potential to need to buy more cows, for the fact that some cows will not be able to get in calf and stay within that block. So what are we going to do with them? Are we going to sell them on? Are we going to cull them? Do we need to buy in to do it? If we use the college as an example again, we have 70 odd calves to be mated this year, but yet we only had 28 in the last mating period. And that was because of the transition period. We don't have that. A good portion of those calves weren't actually of age and of size to be mated, so therefore we needed to move them back as well. So that's all going to impact on things. So if you're not going to be able to meet your per cow needs, you're potentially going to need to buy in cows. Purchase feeds. So if you're moving from an all year round system, no grazing, and you're going out grazing, we don't actually know what the cows are going to be able to achieve in terms of residuals. So it's not much point budgeting on the cows achieving a 1,500 kg of dry matter residual if they're not going to be able to do it. So it's probably best to plan for worst case, hope for best case. And so therefore, if they're not hitting those residuals, we need to top them up with something else. So that's where the plan for a slightly higher purchase feed comes in. Fertilizer. If you're only been putting on fertilizer to get 3 cuts of silage, and now you're moving out grazing, we might need more nitrogen just to kick on, the growth of the grass to get that the ideal average farm cover at different points of time. So vet costs. This is one that's a bit of an unknown. Again, if we use the college as an example, the mastitis and the lameness is more of an environmental issue. So moving the cows out to grass is going to have a positive effect on there. But if it's fertility costs, then moving to grass probably isn't going to have an effect on the costs there. So it's knowing where those costs are coming from and what is going to happen by moving to grass. Bedding, that's obviously going to have a downward trend for the mere fact that if you're warehousing 12 months a year and then you move to them having only housed for 3 months of the year, you're going to have some costs there. Fuel and repairs and spares. You might just be moving from one activity to the other, especially if the cows aren't hitting their grazing residuals. So are you moving from feeding out costs to pre-mowing for the cows? So you're still using the tractor, still using fuel. You're just moving it from one activity to another. Contracting, potentially less, with less need for silage as the cow's going to be grazing, and less slurry spreading. But again, you're going to need to look at what you were doing before you transitioned, or before you start transitioning, to what you actually need. Labour, I'd say there's going to be no change within the first year, as you're still going to have cows calving throughout the whole year, so you're going to need potentially that extra labour unit to deal with the calves and that. But once you get into the flow of things, then you're going to be able to just say maybe getting a relief person to come in, or a part-time person to come in and cover the calves during the calving period. So they're only needed for 12 months of the year, 12 weeks of the year, not 12 months of the year. And then I'd probably say all other costs would remain the same. But most importantly is know the difference between milk production profitable milk over production. So profitable milk is knowing the interaction between milk price and litres, less your costs, whereas production is just simply litres versus cows. I don't know if you've got anything else to add there, Tom, from your experience through starting the transition this year.
Just be realistic of what you think you can achieve in the first year. But I suppose for us, I was probably getting a bit during the breeding period. I was trying to compare us all, like calf and herd, but you can't do that because you're not there yet. You just got to, as always, ride the storm a little bit and just try and reduce your costs as much as you can.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Sarah, any questions?
Yeah. I've got a couple more questions. I've got one that's come in here for Tim. Hopefully, Tim, you can hear us and you can respond. Just asking what, as far as you're concerned with the sort of LIC overview, what are the most important KPIs that you see on the farm?
Cool. Okay. I mean, LIC is really proud to be involved in this. This is part of our industry good. This is part of us giving back to the greater farming community in the UK. Our simple goals are to publicly demonstrate a conversion, to show people how you will convert between one system to the other. And the other thing is to demonstrate ongoing decision-making on farm within a brand new system, and to put in front of you ideas and solutions to and strategies to things we're going to go. So for us, we're really pleased that Walford Farm have taken profitability as a central goal, and we think that everybody should have that, but we're really proud that they've come out of that as a simple way in which they can demonstrate the system working. And how we achieve that, we believe, is by one thing and one thing only. That's days in milk. So that's the number of days that you can get in milk off grass. How we achieve that is simply by maintaining our residuals, so making sure we grow as much grass as we possibly can. And the second thing is about fertility. It's about making sure our best cows are always available to be milked. So for LIC, that's a simple goal, which they've, in the previous webinar, discussed. So yeah, for us, we're really pleased to be involved in this, pleased to be giving back to the industry, and pleased that we can have something that is debatable between the communities to see how we can help other farmers that are looking to take advantage of the amount of grass they grow and get a cow to walk out and eat it rather than cut it and bring it in. It's not the only way, but we think it's a very profitable and a solution to some issues that are out there. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Very well. And Tom, I've got a question here for you. You've put in the new tracks, and somebody's asking whether you feel putting in the tracks has helped with the lameness, or is it the bedding, or is it more regular hoof trimming? What do you think has been the biggest change in terms of lameness of the herd?
Definitely the tracks. Yeah, the tracks has made a massive, massive impact on what we do. It's quite pleasurable to see the cows actually running up them. Yeah, no, I use definitely the tracks all the way.
And just remind us how the tracks are made.
They're about 5 meters wide, and they're 6 to 8 inches deep in sand that was quarried off the farm.
Right, and I've got one final question here, which is an interesting one, I think. Would it be more financially viable to just sell the cows that you've got and buy in the cows that you want?
Yes and no. Cow prices were high last year. You look what the situation now with COVID-19. They're asked to reduce milk. Stock prices are falling. Some people throw milk away. We've protected ourselves. We put ourselves less at risk. We've not brought in disease. We're TB free as well, which is a big thing. So we're still able to sell bull calves and beef calves. So, there's swings and roundabouts for both. If you wanted to get to point A really quick, yeah, you go and buy the cows. But these cows are still achieving what we want them to achieve. So there's no reason why we should have done.
Well, I think next week we're going to be talking more about how to get Holsteins to graze, which is going to be a very interesting subject for a lot of people, I think. And one final question, again, Tom, to you about the college farm. Obviously, you're working with students during this whole process. And for some watching this webinar, it's almost quite a different system. It's quite different to their own farm situation, perhaps. So how are your students relating to the changes that are being made? And what feedback have you had from them?
Oh, it's been very positive. It's had a positive effect on students. I think everyone around the college as well, seeing the cows out a lot earlier than what they expect, and seeing more stock out. The farm looking in a better state as well. Like the grass looks awesome at the minute. Being managed pretty well. They're getting to learn about how another type of system, not just one system as well. Yeah, they've been very enthusiastic, and it's been very positive. I mean, there's some guys that are, from the grass-based system as well, and they're seeing it start from scratch as well, and it's been very interesting for them.
Okay, I've just got a couple more questions which have come through, probably as a result of you mentioning COVID-19, one of them. With the current situation and farmers having to dump milk because their customers don't want it, and Europe talking about voluntary restraint agreements, do you think a grass-based system is more resilient than a TMR system?
Definitely. Yeah, we're not. Yeah, the markets are going to have an effect on everybody, but we're less at risk with the market. The feed prices as well have gone through the roof. Protein's a lot more expensive now. We've just reduced our protein in our diet to 16%. We're able to do that because we're feeding grass. So yeah, it's put us less at risk of this current situation around, and we're not at risk as much.
Do you want to come in on that one, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get involved in the middle of the debate. I think what Tom said is right. I think it is about resilience, about being able to get back to John Roach's maxim, which he says, you don't want a cow's diet to move much more than sort of 10%. So if you're feeding a cow, a lot of grass and 500 kilos of TMR, then you don't want to move that up to 2 ton or something like that. It just takes it too long to transition. So yeah, the resilience is certainly in there around where you want to go. But also the big thing is that you can start managing profitability, or you can start managing the way in which you approach farming if you are in a grass system.
Okay. Then I've got a question here. How does the farm plan to improve fertility? And I know we're going to discuss about breeding and fertility again further down the road, but perhaps you can give us an idea, Sean and Tom.
Yeah, so the plan to improve fertility is through bull selection. So we're bulls have been selected on 2 criterias. One is solids and 2 is fertility.
Same as Sean. I suppose a reduction in milk as well is going to help the cows getting back in calf, but I think our management tags are pretty key to what we're about to trying to achieve as well.
Okay.
I'll just add another point there, sorry, Sarah, before you put it in. A block calving herd naturally selects fertile cows. So there are going to be cows that are already in the herd that will stay in the block. And so they have everything that we want already there. We're just going to add to it. It's the cows that, say 400 days calving interval that we just simply don't want in the herd. So those ones will drop out of the system. The cows that are already in the block that we managed to make this year, that's the base of what we want to keep.
Okay. And one final point that's been made here, wouldn't you be buying and selling cows in the same market?
Yeah, there's no guarantee you're going to get the same price for your cow as you're going to pay for the next one, is there?
The issue is there also is you'd be selling some cows which would be towards the end of their lactation, some cows that would be about to calve, some cows in the middle of lactation, just calved. So you're not going to get an even price across all of them. Whereas the cows you're all buying in, you're going to be pretty much paying the same price for all of them. So yeah, as Tom said, there's risk that you're not going to get the same price for your cows as what you're buying in.
Can I just have a mention here? I mean, what Tom said earlier and what Sean has said is that there are some very good cows in here. And we're not about talking about a cow. None of us can prescribe the right cow. Tom's the only one who can, who knows his cows and wants to work towards getting the kind of herd he wants. So what we're doing is just contributing to his herd, as Sean said. We're not looking to completely rewrite the rule book. We're just saying that this is a process of which we'll slowly go through and work towards the cow you want. So yeah, I think that the approach they've taken is absolutely right.
Well, that's great. I think we've come to the end of the questions now. Sean, if you want to.
All right. Yep. So that brings us to the end of the webinar tonight. I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and we'll be back again next Thursday. So that's Thursday, the 23rd of April, for our 3rd webinar. And that's going to be around grazing, moving high input Holstein cows to grass. So we look forward to having you join us again if you're able to. We will be sending out our goal sheet that we want you to fill in. So that's goals that you might or that you think that the college should be aiming for, and please make them time specific, as that will put us, give us a better understanding of what everyone thinks out there that we should be able to achieve, and we will actually take some of these goals on. So yeah, if they're going to push us, we'll probably take them on. If they're unrealistic, we probably won't. But yeah, we do encourage you to put forward. So yeah, at the end of that, we'll say thank you and good night to everyone.